of this year. The bad news is red meat is set to get even more expensive. And here's why you're paying more for your steak. Increasing demand from China as more move away from a pork-based diet. There's limited cattle supply in some countries, plus a shortage of slaughterhouse workers due to the pandemic, and the cost of feed is rising. Now, Brazil, Australia, the US, India, and Argentina are top beef exporters. And the biggest importers, with the exception of the US, they're mostly Asian countries. Last week, Argentina, the number 2 supplier to China after Brazil, halted beef exports for a month as it tries to contain domestic meat prices. China has also cut some of its beef imports from Australia as relations deteriorate. Now, effects of Argentina's suspension have trickled down to other markets. Singapore, which gets its supplies from the South American country, has put in big orders for Australian beef. Higher food prices play a key role in lifting Singapore's April core inflation to 0.6%. Mergers and acquisitions of tech companies have hit a record high in Asia Pacific. Last year, deals total $136 billion. That's more than double 2019's figures, according to data provider Dealogic. Overall, tech deals account for about 1/3 of Asia Pacific's M&A transactions. Such deals total $482 billion as of yesterday. One recent high-profile tech M&A transaction was the $18 billion merger of ride-hailing giant Gojek and e-commerce leader Tokopedia in Indonesia's largest ever deal. Mega deals in the pipeline include a possible transaction that could take Japan's Toshiba private. The tech M&A boom is expected to continue as the pandemic has accelerated activities in the virtual economy. Foreign money is increasingly being used to fund SoftBank's global tech expansion. In the year to March, loans for the Japanese investment giant climbed by 42%, most from foreign lenders. The conglomerate, headed by Masayoshi Son, borrowed about $46 billion from its principal lenders in the last business year. Mizuho Financial Group was the only Japanese bank in the top 3 backers, alongside Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase. For lenders, SoftBank is a good customer, bringing healthy profits. But Japanese banks have been running up against internal lending limits with the large loans SoftBank takes to fund its buying sprees. SoftBank has experienced rapidly changing fortunes over the last year. Its stock price and portfolio valuations plummeted in the early days of the pandemic, but it finished the year in style with annual net profit at a record $45.8 billion as it benefited from market enthusiasm for tech. Foreign banks operating in China will soon be able to borrow more from overseas. This could help banks like HSBC and JP Morgan Chase with limited access to deposits expand in China. Now, under the new regulations starting this week, the leverage ratio for such offshore funding has been raised to 2. That's more than double the previous ratio of 0.8. Qualified commercial banks will also be given an initial quota of $1.5 billion. China is a huge draw for the world's biggest banks, with billions of profits on the line from investment banking to wealth management. And Chinese authorities have been relaxing rules for foreign institutions as the country continues to open up its financial sector. Hyundai Motor Group is making a big push towards electric vehicles. It's said to be halving the number of combustion engine models in its lineup to free up resources to invest in EVs. Like its rivals, Hyundai is accelerating its push towards eco-friendly vehicles. It aims to gradually expand EV battery offerings in key markets, including the US, Europe, and China. The goal is full electrification by 2040. Thai Airways has started selling direct flights from 4 European cities ahead of Phuket's planned quarantine-free reopening in July. Initial demand is expected to be soft because of tight travel restrictions. Britain requires travelers returning from Thailand to quarantine at home for 10 days. Passengers must also get a certificate of entry before arriving in Thailand after the government extended a nationwide state of emergency to the end of July. Well, that's your business update for now. Back to you, Don.
Thanks, Liz. India's Odisha state will screen 650,000 people for COVID-19 after they were forced to evacuate by Cyclone Yas. The storm has killed at least 9 people, including 4 children. Tens of thousands of homes have been destroyed. More than 2 million people have been evacuated in Odisha and West Bengal. Authorities have warned that it will be a huge challenge to maintain safe distancing at shelters.
About 900 Singaporeans will have to defer their Hajj pilgrimage for a second year. The Islamic Religious Council of Singapore, or MUIS, says the global COVID-19 situation is to blame. Those affected will be reallocated places next year.
Internationally, we are seeing multiple countries that have multiple waves of spike in their COVID numbers. And there is also reports that there are variants of the viruses that is being seen and detected at multiple countries, even in our country, Singapore. And different countries have different so-called speed and rate of vaccinating their citizens. So all these will probably or definitely increase the risk for travel.
While Saudi Arabia hasn't made an official decision, MUIS says it's unclear if the Hajj pilgrimage will be open to international travellers. MUIS hopes the decision will ease the anxieties of the pilgrims and their families. Hajj deposits paid in 2020 and were carried over will be refunded.
A final trial for a new COVID-19 vaccine has begun. Pharma giants Sanofi and GlaxoSmithKline are testing their own coronavirus inoculation. The trial will first determine the vaccine's efficacy against the original virus detected in Wuhan. It will then look at how it responds to the variant discovered in South Africa. More than 35,000 adults have volunteered for the study. Both companies will also examine the vaccine's ability to work as a booster shot for those who've already taken a different vaccine. They're hoping to launch the new treatment by the end of the year. Still to come, the United Nations considering an investigation into claims of abuse committed during the recent Israeli-Palestinian violence. This U.S. town says its water is poisoning residents. Can Joe Biden's environmental agenda help?
There's still apprehension on how the one country, two systems political system will continue to evolve. But it's the resilience of the people holding on to their culture proudly and strong institutions all help to make Hong Kong what it is today and the hope of a better tomorrow. Roland Lim, CNA, Hong Kong. Bearing the brunt of worsening global warming.
As we see the whole landscape changing, it is really impacting our way of life.
Can we reduce our carbon footprint to fight climate change?
We're doing our bit to